Lust is never satisfied. It whispers like a friend, but devours like a parasite. It enters quietly, disguised as harmless pleasure, yet it is the root from which other sins grow. It clouds the mind, bends the will, and weakens the defenses of even the strongest souls. History is littered with men who conquered nations, but fell to a glance, a touch, a secret appetite. And the truth is this: lust does not stop at lust. It feeds greed, fuels pride, and awakens every hidden weakness. The question is not whether lust tempts you, but how much of your life it already owns. The hidden root and ancient trap. Lust rarely announces itself with thunder. It does not storm the gates of your soul waving banners of destruction. No. It comes like a whisper, like a seed so small you almost dismiss it. A thought, a glance, a passing desire you tell yourself is harmless. And yet in that very moment, the ground of your heart has been opened, and the root begins to push downward. The root is small, but it is alive, and if left unchecked, it grows into a tree that can crack stone, choke purpose, and topple kingdoms. This is the hidden root of lust, its power to disguise itself as something natural, something innocent, something controllable. You tell yourself, I can handle this, I deserve this, this is just who I am. And in believing that, you have already stepped into its trap. Lust is never satisfied, because its appetite is not for pleasure but for control. It seeks not only to take your body, but to weaken your spirit. And once the spirit is weakened, every other sin finds its way in. History has given us warnings written in blood and betrayal. Samson was stronger than any man alive, yet his downfall was not in the battlefield, but in the bedroom. David, a king chosen by God himself, wrote psalms that touched eternity, yet he fell not to an army, but to a moment of ungoverned desire when his eyes lingered where they should not. Kingdoms have not only fallen by swords, but by seduction. Wars may have been fought over land, but countless lives are destroyed because of lust's secret victories. Why does lust defeat even the strongest? Because it attacks the seat of decision. Other sins appeal to action: stealing, lying, cheating. Lust goes deeper. It corrupts desire itself. And when desire is bent, every choice after bends with it. The trap is not that lust offers too much. The trap is that it promises so little yet demands everything. It offers a spark of pleasure, but in exchange it steals your clarity, your willpower, your dignity. Lust thrives in secrecy, unlike anger which bursts outward, or pride which can be seen in speech. Lust feeds on isolation. It hides in your private moments, in your imagination, in the places no one else sees. That is why it is such a dangerous root. It grows beneath the soil, where the eye cannot easily notice. By the time it breaks the surface, it has already wound itself around the foundation of your life. This ancient trap is not new to our age. It is as old as Eden. The serpent knew how to bait desire, how to take what was good and twist it into appetite ungoverned, and the pattern has not changed. Temptation always presents itself as beauty, but behind the veil is bondage. Lust takes what God designed for love, covenant, and creation, and deforms it into addiction, secrecy, and destruction. It turns intimacy into transaction, turns passion into poison, turns longing into slavery. The reason lust is called a trap is simple. It promises freedom, while tightening chains. Like a snare baited with food, it lures you with something you think you control. You step closer, reach out, and suddenly realize you are caught. At first the chains feel light, almost ignorable, but as time passes they grow heavier. The more you feed lust, the more it demands. The more you indulge, the less satisfied you become. The trap is designed not to give, but to drain. And here lies the hidden danger. Lust doesn't just stay in its lane, it spreads. When lust rules, truth weakens. Lies are told to cover indulgence. Pride rises to justify actions. Anger flares when confronted. Laziness sets in as discipline erodes. One sin becomes the soil where others flourish. The hidden root becomes a network of chains, each link forged from your own concessions. So many souls wonder why they cannot pray with fire, why they cannot focus on purpose, why their vision feels blurred and their discipline broken. Often the answer lies beneath the soil. Lust has rooted itself where no one is looking. It drains energy meant for destiny. It numbs conviction meant for courage. It poisons clarity meant for leadership. The ancient trap has destroyed men who were otherwise unstoppable. It has silenced voices, toppled empires, and left legacies in ruins, and it begins the same way every time. Not with a violent attack, but with a subtle invitation. That is why it is called hidden. That is why it is called ancient. The question then is not whether lust will whisper to you. It already has. The question is whether you will recognize the root before it becomes a tree, whether you will see the trap before it locks around your soul. Because the moment you do, the spell is broken. Awareness is the first act of warfare, and naming the enemy is the first step toward freedom. 2. The web of sin and the enemy's strategy. Lust never travels alone. It enters as a guest, but invites an army. What begins as a single compromise soon weaves into a web, binding the soul in ways you never expected. Lust is not content with your body. It wants your mind, your truth, your time, your relationships. And once it gains entry, it creates an ecosystem of sin, where every indulgence feeds another, where every weakness strengthens the chain. Consider the first lie spoken after lust takes root. No one will know. That lie becomes the soil of secrecy. Then comes another. This isn't hurting anyone. That lie becomes the justification. Soon, deceit is no longer occasional but instinctive. You lie to yourself to sleep at night. You lie to others to keep appearances. You begin constructing an entire life around hiding what you refuse to confront. Lust births deception, and deception feeds pride. And pride whispers, I can stop whenever I want. Pride convinces you that you are in control, even as chains tighten. But pride itself is sin, and when joined with lust, it blinds the eyes to truth. You defend what is destroying you. You fight for what enslaves you. You argue against freedom because bondage has disguised itself as pleasure. From lies and pride flows laziness, because discipline dies in the presence of secret indulgence. The energy that should fuel prayer, work, and vision is consumed in hiding, in shame, in exhaustion from a double life. Laziness is not just physical idleness. It is spiritual paralysis. It is the inability to rise in power because you are too weighed down by secrecy. And when laziness sets in, greed follows. If lust teaches you to never be satisfied in intimacy, greed teaches you to never be satisfied in possession. One appetite feeds the other until you are caught in endless hunger. This is the web. Lust is the spider at the center, but the strands reach out into every other part of life. To break one strand while feeding the spider is useless. The web rebuilds itself, stronger than before. And behind the web lies a greater strategist, the enemy of your soul. Demons know that lust is not merely a private failure, but a public strategy. Lust is the doorway. It is the weak point in the wall of your spirit. If they can get through that door, the fortress of your life can be looted from the inside. The enemy rarely attacks with open force. He whispers with suggestion. Thoughts that seem like your own are whispered into your mind. Images, memories, and fantasies are replayed until your desires are reshaped. Your body becomes the battlefield, your own mind the weapon turned against you. That is why lust feels so powerful, because the enemy has weaponized your natural desires against their own creator. Do you think it's a coincidence that every culture drowning in corruption first drowned in lust? When discipline is abandoned in one area, it soon collapses in others. The Roman Empire rotted long before barbarians touched its gates, rotted from decadence, indulgence, and lust, disguised as entertainment. Families broke, honor decayed, leadership weakened, until an empire that ruled the known world fell from the inside out. That is not history's accident. That is strategy repeated across generations. Our age is no different. Lust is now marketed, broadcast, celebrated. What was once shameful is now applauded. The enemy's tactic has shifted from secrecy to normalization. If he can convince you that lust is not sin but self-expression, then why resist? Chains disguised as jewelry are chains all the same. And here is the darkest truth. Lust never satisfies. It demands more. What was thrilling yesterday feels dull today. The appetite grows, mutates, reaching for darker, more destructive expressions. And each step deeper only strengthens the web. What you thought was a private indulgence becomes a public downfall. What you thought was harmless becomes the habit that rewrites your destiny. But do not mistake this for hopelessness. The web is intricate, but it is not unbreakable. The strategy of the enemy is powerful, but it is not unstoppable. The very fact that lust weaves lies proves it fears the truth. The very fact it hides in shadows proves it cannot endure the light. Every chain forged by deception can be shattered by recognition. The first key to breaking the web is seeing it for what it is, not just personal weakness, but spiritual warfare, not just indulgence, but invasion. When you see lust, not as a private failure but as the enemy's chosen doorway into your life, you begin to treat it with the seriousness it deserves. And when you treat it as war, you no longer fight with excuses, but with weapons. The strategy of the enemy is to keep you blind, bound and busy feeding what drains you. Your counter-strategy must be discipline, vigilance, and light, because once you cut through the web, the spider is exposed. And once the spider is exposed, it dies not by your strength, but by the fire of truth. The theft of vision, love, and community. Lust does not only corrupt the body, it clouds the mind, blinds the eyes, and poisons the heart. It is not just about what you touch, it is about what you can no longer see. Vision is the first thing it steals, and when vision dies, purpose follows. Think of this. Every person is born with a divine imagination, a spark that allows them to dream beyond their limits, to see a future that does not yet exist. That vision fuels courage, endurance, and faith. But lust fogs that vision. Where there was clarity, there is confusion. Where there was fire, there is smoke. The energy that should be spent building your destiny gets rerouted into managing secrecy, hiding shame, and feeding appetite. You cannot see tomorrow clearly when your eyes are trapped in forbidden images. That is how lust steals destiny without you noticing. It doesn't rip the crown from your head in a single motion. It erodes your focus, little by little, until you no longer lift your eyes toward your calling. Dreams are exchanged for distractions. Goals are postponed until they wither, and what remains is a hollow life, endlessly chasing what never satisfies. But vision is not the only theft. Lust is also the enemy of love. Love is sacred, not just emotion, but commitment, covenant, sacrifice. Love sees people as souls, not objects, as eternal beings, not tools for gratification. Lust twists that vision. It teaches you to see others as commodities, as bodies, as something to consume and discard. It dehumanizes, and in doing so it slowly corrodes your ability to love deeply, purely, and faithfully. This is why relationships crumble under the weight of lust. Trust shatters, affection becomes performance, intimacy becomes counterfeit, a shadow of the real thing. What was designed to be a bond of safety becomes a battlefield of suspicion. Families fracture, marriages break, and children grow up in homes where love was meant to rule, but lust quietly reigned. And lust does not stop at stealing vision and love. It moves to destroy community. It thrives in secrecy, pulling you into isolation. When shame takes root, confession is silenced. You avoid the eyes of those who would remind you of who you are meant to be. You distance yourself from accountability, because to stay in community is to risk being seen, and so you hide. Isolation is where sin multiplies fastest. Alone, you convince yourself that indulgence is normal, that your chains are unique, that no one else could possibly understand. Alone, you lose the sharpening of iron against iron. Alone, your prayers weaken, your courage fades, and your hope diminishes. What was once a vibrant connection with others becomes silence, shadows, and solitude. Do you see the theft? It is not random, it is precise. The enemy knows exactly what to target. Vision, because without it you stumble. Love, because without it you dehumanize. Community, because without it you are defenseless. These are the pillars of a strong soul, and lust seeks to break each one. Look at the life of David again. After his moment with Bathsheba, his vision blurred. The man who once danced before the Lord with joy now spent nights in anguish. His love for his family suffered. His household became divided, marked by betrayal and violence. His community fractured. The king who was once adored by his people faced rebellion within his own house. One moment of lust multiplied into years of chaos. That is the cost. And yet here is the sobering truth. You do not notice the theft until it is almost complete. Lust blinds you while it robs you. You think you are still in control. You think you can still see clearly. But everyone else notices the fading fire in your eyes, the loss of discipline, the absence of joy. They see the cracks long before you admit they exist. This is why lust is so dangerous. It destroys silently. The root grows underground. The thief moves in shadow. By the time you awaken, much has already been taken. But this is also why exposure is the cure. The moment you bring lust into the light, its power weakens. The moment you confess, its chains loosen. Vision begins to return. Love begins to heal. Community begins to restore. What lust tried to steal, truth can recover. If lust has already clouded your vision, stolen your love, or driven you into isolation, know this: you are not beyond redemption. The thief is clever, but he is not final. What was lost can be restored. What was broken can be rebuilt. What was silenced can sing again. But the first step is to recognize the theft for what it is. Not just a weakness, but a strategy. Not just a mistake, but an attack. Because once you see the pattern, you begin to fight differently. You begin to guard your vision like a treasure, to protect love like a covenant, to cling to community like a shield. And when you do, the trap of lust no longer holds you. You no longer live blinded, but awake. You no longer live isolated, but connected. You no longer live in counterfeit intimacy, but in true love. That is the turning point. When you refuse to let lust define what you see, who you love, and where you belong. Lust is not defeated by willpower alone. It's destroyed by strategy, truth, and discipline. That's why I wrote 7 Biblical Secrets to Destroy Lust, a practical, battle-tested guide to help you break free before lust destroys what matters most. Your future, your purpose, your destiny are worth fighting for. The link is waiting in the description and pinned comment. Don't delay freedom another day. Click now, get your copy, and start walking in the authority you were created for. 4. The battle within and the cost of compromise. The greatest wars are not fought with swords, guns, or armies. They are fought in silence, deep within the human will. Lust is not simply a sin of the flesh. It is a war in the unseen, and the battlefield is your own heart. Every temptation you face is a test of allegiance. Will you bow to appetite, or will you rise in spirit? This battle is not about one decision, but about a pattern of choices. Each time you surrender to lust, the ground of your will becomes softer, weaker, easier to trample. One compromise opens the door for another. One indulgence makes the next one feel justified. And before long, the fortress of your character has been breached. Not by a single storm, but by countless raindrops that eroded the stone. That is the cost of compromise. It multiplies itself. Lust rarely destroys in one dramatic collapse. Instead, it chips away, moment by moment, glance by glance, decision by decision, until the person you once were feels like a stranger. You ask yourself, how did I get here? The answer is simple: one step at a time in the wrong direction. Lust never remains contained. The appetite you feed in secret begins to leak into every area of life. First, it robs you of discipline. Your mornings grow lazy. Your prayers grow faint. Your focus splinters. Then it corrupts your honesty. You begin to lie. Small lies at first, but soon entire narratives built to protect your secrecy. Then anger erupts, because deep inside you despise the chains you wear. And finally despair whispers, you will never be free. That is the full circle of compromise. Lust birthing laziness, laziness birthing lies, lies birthing anger, anger birthing despair. Look at the pattern. Each sin gives birth to the next. This is the spiritual math of destruction. Lust may be the spark, but soon the fire spreads, and by the time you realize the flames are everywhere, much of your strength has already turned to ash. Do not underestimate the war inside you. The flesh and the spirit are not casual neighbors. They are enemies. The flesh cries for indulgence, but the spirit cries for destiny. The flesh demands comfort, but the spirit demands calling, and the two cannot rule together. That is why the battle feels so exhausting, because it is not a minor struggle but a war for your throne. Every act of surrender to lust is not just a moment of weakness. It is a vote cast for who will rule your life. Will the throne of your will belong to appetite or to destiny? That is the decision made each time you face temptation. But here is where many fall. They believe the cost of compromise is small. It's just one look, just one night, just one thought. But what seems small in the moment creates habits that shape eternity. A single unchecked glance toppled David into adultery, deception, and murder. A single compromise with Delilah turned Samson from a warrior into a prisoner. His eyes gouged out, grinding grain for his enemies. The cost is never small. It always multiplies. The truth is harsh, but it is also liberating. Every surrender to lust makes the next surrender easier, but every resistance strengthens the spirit for greater battles ahead. Discipline is not built in victory alone. It is forged in the refusal to compromise. The war within you is training ground. Every no to temptation is a step toward freedom. Every refusal to bow is a declaration that your spirit will not be enslaved. The cost of compromise is slavery, but the reward of resistance is sovereignty over your own soul, and sovereignty is priceless, because the one who conquers within will stand unshaken without. The one who wins the private war will not fall in public battles. Think of it like this. The man who cannot govern his eyes will not govern a kingdom. The woman who cannot master her desires will not master her destiny. Compromise disqualifies you, not because God withdraws calling, but because you disarm yourself of the strength required to carry it. This is why the war within matters. It is not just about resisting a habit. It is about preserving your throne. You were not made to be ruled by impulses. You were made to rule over them. But when you compromise, you hand your crown to the very thing meant to be beneath your feet. And so the call is clear. Recognize the battlefield for what it is. Do not call it harmless when it is lethal. Do not call it weakness when it is war. Do not call it normal when it is slavery. Because when you name the battle correctly, you begin to fight with the urgency it deserves. The cost of compromise is always higher than you think, but the reward of resistance is always greater than you imagine. And that is why the war within you is worth every ounce of fight. 5. Awakening the warrior spirit through discipline. Every generation produces two kinds of people, those who bow to appetite and those who master it. The difference is not talent, not intelligence, not opportunity, it is discipline. The strongest warrior is not the one who conquers nations, but the one who conquers himself. Lust thrives where discipline dies. It feeds on idleness, on lack of vigilance, on an unguarded mind. That is why the ancients treated discipline as sacred. They understood what our modern world forgets. No man rises above the level of his self-control. Samson's muscles could tear down gates, but his lack of discipline handed him over to Delilah. David could defeat giants, but one undisciplined glance nearly cost him his kingdom. Strength without discipline is weakness in disguise. The warrior spirit awakens when you realize discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. To say no to lust is not to deprive yourself. It is to preserve yourself. Discipline is not chains around your desires. It is armor around your destiny. It guards what matters most by denying what matters least. How does one awaken this spirit? First, through recognition. You must see lust for what it is. An enemy, not a friend. As long as you call it pleasure, you will serve it. But the moment you call it poison, you begin to resist. Awareness is the first weapon. The warrior never fights blind. Second, through training. Discipline is not built in a single act of resistance. It is forged through daily warfare. Prayer is not merely words. It is the sharpening of the sword of your spirit. Fasting is not merely abstaining from food. It is rebellion against the tyranny of the flesh. Vigilance over the mind is not paranoia. It is guarding the gates of your imagination against the whispers of the enemy. Each act of discipline is training for greater battles. The early saints and prophets practiced discipline, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to see the cost of compromise. They fasted because they knew appetite can enslave. They prayed because they knew silence breeds deception. They guarded their eyes because they knew vision can be stolen. Their practices were not religious rituals. They were strategies of war, and those strategies remain just as powerful today. Discipline restores dignity. Lust wants you to feel powerless, ashamed, bound. But every disciplined act rebuilds the foundation of who you are. When you rise early to pray instead of sleeping through conviction, you declare, my spirit leads, not my flesh. When you deny yourself indulgence for the sake of clarity, you declare, I am ruler over my body, not slave to it. Every act of discipline shouts to heaven and hell alike, I am free. And with that freedom comes strength. Not just the strength to resist lust, but the strength to conquer every other sin it feeds. The one who can master desire can master anger, greed, pride, and fear. Because if you can say no to yourself, you can say no to anything. That is why discipline is not just about abstaining. It is about awakening the warrior within. Do not imagine this warrior spirit as rage or brute force. It is not wild energy but controlled fire. A sword is dangerous in untrained hands, but unstoppable in the hands of a master. Discipline is that mastery. It channels desire into destiny. It transforms raw impulse into refined power. And here is the paradox. The moment you choose discipline, life feels harder, but it is actually getting easier. At first saying no burns, Fasting hurts. Resisting temptation feels like war, but soon, your spirit grows stronger. The weight that once crushed you becomes the weight that builds you. The temptation that once owned you becomes the training that empowers you. The warrior spirit is not something you wait to feel. It is something you choose to awaken. Each act of discipline is like striking flint against stone. Sparks at first, then flame, then fire. And when the fire burns, lust cannot stand in its heat. So awaken the warrior. Do not wait for a perfect moment, because perfection never comes. Begin with what you can control now. Your eyes, your thoughts, your time, your habits. Small acts of discipline today create unshakable strength tomorrow. The giant is defeated not in the moment of battle but in the years of preparation that led to it. Remember this, discipline is not deprivation, it is preparation. Every no to lust is a yes to destiny. Every refusal of temptation is training for greater victory. Every act of discipline awakens the warrior spirit that lust tried to bury. And when the warrior rises, chains break. When the warrior rises, the enemy flees. When the warrior rises, lust loses its throne. Because you were never meant to be ruled by appetite. You were meant to rule with authority. And discipline is the crown that makes it possible. 6. The redemption of desire and the climactic call. Desire itself is not the enemy. Lust is the corruption of desire, not its source. You were created with longings, passions, and fire within you, not to be crushed, but to be directed. The enemy twists what is holy, hoping you will despise desire altogether. But redemption is never about destruction. It is about restoration. The same energy that lust drains can become the energy that fuels your destiny. The same passion that enslaves when twisted can liberate when aligned with truth. Desire was never meant to trap you. It was meant to propel you. But for that to happen, it must be purified, not poisoned. Think of fire. In the wild, fire can consume forests, homes, lives. But in the heart, fire brings warmth, safety, and life. The flame is the same. Its direction is what makes it dangerous or beautiful. Lust is fire raging out of control. Love, discipline, and purpose are fire under mastery. Redemption is not about extinguishing the flame within you, but about giving it order, shape, and mission. So how do you redeem desire? First, by starving the parasite. Lust survives on secrecy, indulgence, and repetition. Cut off its supply and it begins to wither. This is why fasting, prayer, and accountability matter. They are not religious motions. They are ways of cutting off the oxygen that feeds the fire of lust. Every time you refuse to indulge, you weaken its hold. Every time you confess instead of conceal, you strip it of its power. Second, by feeding the soul. You cannot merely remove lust. You must replace it with vision. A life emptied of appetite but filled with nothing else will return to bondage. The warrior who starves lust but does not feed purpose will soon find himself hungry again. But when you set your eyes on higher callings to love deeply, to create boldly, to live with holy ambition, the counterfeit appetite loses its appeal. You do not overcome darkness by staring at it, but by flooding the room with light. Third, by realigning desire with destiny. You were not created for chains, but for crowns. You were not made to be ruled by impulses, but to rule with authority. Every longing within you has a divine direction. Your hunger for intimacy can become a hunger for connection that builds families and legacy. Your drive for pleasure can be transformed into a drive for creativity, beauty, and service. Your passion for fulfillment can be elevated into a passion for eternity. This is the redemption of desire, to take what the enemy twisted and give it back its rightful. And here comes the climactic truth. Lust does not have the final word. No matter how deep its roots, no matter how long its chains, no matter how many times you have fallen, redemption is always greater than corruption. The cross proves it. The empty tomb proves. Freedom is not a theory. It is a reality available to anyone who dares to rise. But rising demands decision. You cannot half resist lust and hope to be free. You cannot play with fire and hope not to burn. This is not a casual struggle. It is war, and war requires resolve. The moment you declare no more, heaven aligns with you, strength fills you, and the warrior within you stands tall. Understand this. Every temptation you resist makes you stronger. Every discipline you embrace makes you free. Every moment you choose love over lust, purpose over appetite, destiny over deception, you reclaim ground that was stolen from you. And as you continue, the chains that once felt unbreakable begin to shatter. The shame that once silenced you turns into testimony. The desires that once enslaved you become the very passions that fuel your calling. This is not just about resisting sin. It is about reclaiming your crown. You were made to stand, not crawl. You were designed to reign, not bow. And lust is not the king. You are, but only if you rise, only if you choose to take back your throne. So here is the call. Starve the parasite, feed the soul, reclaim desire. Let fire burn within you, not fire that consumes you, but fire that propels you. Let your passion no longer be wasted on what destroys but invested in what builds. Let your hunger no longer feed chains, but fuel freedom. Because at the end of all things, you will not be measured by how much pleasure you indulged, but by how much purpose you fulfilled. You will not be remembered for the appetites you fed, but for the destinies you unlocked. And that destiny begins the moment you decide lust will not define you. The hidden root has been exposed. The ancient trap has been revealed. The web of sin has been cut. Now the warrior within you stands awake, and the crown that lust tried to steal is waiting. Rise, take it, rule. Lust has always promised freedom, but its chains are tighter than iron. It whispers of pleasure, yet leaves only emptiness. It lures with beauty, yet blinds the eyes to destiny. And if you felt its weight, you already know this truth. Lust is never satisfied, and it will not stop until it has stolen everything sacred from you. But here is the greater truth. You do not have to remain bound. You are not condemned to repeat the same cycle of secrecy, shame, and defeat. Inside of you is the warrior spirit waiting to rise, waiting to claim the throne of your will, waiting to declare once and for all that appetite will no longer be your master. Your life is worth more than chains. Your purpose is worth more than moments of compromise. And your crown is worth protecting with everything inside you. This is not just about rejecting lust. It is about reclaiming vision, dignity, and freedom. It is about living with fire purified, not polluted. It is about choosing destiny over destruction. And if you are ready to take this fight seriously, I've prepared something for you, not theory, but strategy. I've written a guide called 7 Biblical Secrets to Destroy Lust Before It Destroys You. Inside, I share the principles and practices that break the cycle, restore your strength, and arm you with the tools to win this war. If this message has spoken to you, if you know you've been called to rise above lust and take back your crown, then your next step is simple. Go to the description right now, click the link and grab your copy. Don't wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow is where compromise waits. Victory begins today. The throne of your will belongs to you, but only if you claim it. Click the link, take the first step, and let freedom begin.